very good afternoon to all the attendees. And first of all, I would like to thank the Ahmedabad Family Physician Association for hosting my talk over here. And I know it's a post-lunch session, and there is bound to be some degree of drowsiness in the room. So hence, to get rid of that drowsiness, I will be discussing two drugs which help in controlling the postprandial blood glucose levels, and I will be comparing two drugs, that is SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors, as far as management of diabetes is concerned. So this is a closer look at the CV effects of the 21st century type 2 diabetic agents. We know that after the 2008 rosiglitazone fiasco, the FDA had mandated that each and every anti-diabetic drug should undergo a CVOT before it is meant for US FDA approval, and hence any new drug after 2008 has a CVOT trial dedicated to it to basically prove its safety as well as efficacy. So this is the safety CV safety trials which have been done with each and every compound, and as you can see, you have different trials for different agents. Like you have got the SAVOR-TIMI and the EXAMINE trial as far as the DPP4 inhibitors is concerned, the TECOS trial with sitagliptin, you've got the EMPA-REG trial, CANVAS trial, CREDENCE trial, and the DECLARE-TIMI trial as far as the SGLT2 inhibitors are concerned, and the CARMELINA trial for linagliptin. So basically these studies were done to prove their CV safety prior to their getting the US FDA approval. Now coming to the GLP-1 analog molecule itself. So GLP-1 analog has various potential effects as far as the CV system is concerned, and the mechanism of action by which GLP-1 analogs help not only as far as diabetes management is concerned, but also its pleiotropic effects is that it basically increases the insulin secretion, decreases the glucagon secretion. It also has effects as far as the beta cell proliferation is concerned. It also has central effects as far as decreasing appetite is concerned, and hence we have GLP-1 analogs which are basically also approved for weight loss. In liver, they decrease the gluconeogenesis as well as the glycogenolysis, and they increase the insulin sensitivity at the muscle and the adipose tissue. The incretin hormone, which basically increases because of the GLP-1 analog, has positive effect as far as the endothelial function is concerned. It increases the nitric oxide production and also increases the myocardial contractility, along with improving the systolic function and improving the ischemic preconditioning. And so these are the postulated mechanisms by which the CVOT trials with different GLP-1 analogs have shown positive effects as far as decreasing the hospitalization for heart failure is concerned, and probably their positive effects on the hard renal outcomes are concerned. So these are the summary of the CV outcomes with the GLP-1 analogs. We'll be skipping this slide. We'll predominantly look at the CVOTs which have been done for DPP4 inhibitors, and we had the SAVOR-TIMI trial for sexagliptin, which had shown that sexagliptin, when compared to placebo, was safe as far as the 3-point MACE is concerned, and the hazard ratio was 1, and similar results were seen with the EXAMINE trial, TECOS trial, and the ELIXIR trial. So what this slide basically tells us that DPP4 inhibitors are safe as far as their CV outcomes are concerned. They may not be beneficial like the SGLT2 inhibitors, but they are definitely safe. They do not increase the hospitalization for heart failure or admissions for non-fatal MI, non-fatal stroke, or they do not increase the CV death. So this is what I was talking about. So for all the primary outcomes, all the completed CVOTs fall within the FDA mandated upper 95% confidence interval limit of 1.3, meaning to say that all the approved DPP4 inhibitors that we just talked about are CV safe as far as type 2 diabetic patients are concerned. This is the data regarding the hospitalization for heart failure for all the completed CVs, and as you can see, as far as SAVOR-TIMI trial is concerned, in sexagliptin there was a slight increased hospitalization for heart failure in patients who were given sexagliptin as compared to placebo. However, in all the other trials of DPP4 inhibitors, they have been found to be CV safe or neutral as compared to placebo. Now, what are the selected mechanistic trials, what are the possible mechanisms by which DPP-4 inhibitors may have a modest beneficial effect as far as CV effects are concerned. So they, trials in rodents and early clinical trials have shown that the decreased myocardial infarct size, they have a positive effect as far as decreasing the triglyceride levels are concerned. They increase the left ventricular function. They decrease the atherosclerotic plaque volume, which have been seen in studies which have evaluated the carotid intima media thickness. They decrease the inflammation and oxidative stress. They decrease inflammatory markers like TNF alpha and interferon gamma, and they improve the endothelial function. So as far as the summary of the CV outcome trials with DPP-4 inhibitors are concerned, all the trials, as you can see from this, came to a conclusion, and all of these trials are completed, the latest of which were the Carolina trial and the Carmelina trial for linagliptin, and all the DPP-4 inhibitors were found to be CV safe. And as you can see from this trial, the trial had a variety of population, right, with patients who had a prior MI or a prior heart failure or a prior history of CVD. The average duration of diabetes was between 7 to 11 years in these trials, meaning to say that even long-standing diabetics were included in this study. And in spite of all these long trials, these molecules eventually proved to be CV safe. Right, now talking about the pharmacological properties of the available SGLT2 inhibitors, we know these are the three most commonly used SGLT2 inhibitors in our clinical practice, that is empagliflozin, dapagliflozin and canagliflozin, and these are the therapeutic dosages, and we know that they are to be administered once a day, irrespective of before or after taking your meal. These drugs are primarily metabolized by glucuronidation, and there is no active metabolite, and they've got variable amount of hepatic as well as renal clearance. So these are the SGLT2 inhibitors modulated range of factors as compared to the CV risk, and this is based on clinical and mechanistic studies. SGLT2 inhibitors have shown to decrease the blood pressure, decrease the arterial stiffness. There is hard evidence as far as decreasing the albuminuria and progression of EGFR is concerned. They also decrease the uric acid levels, decrease the sympathetic nervous system stimulation. They have a modest effect as far as weight loss is concerned. They cause around 3 to 5 kgs of weight loss. They decrease the oxidative stress, and they decrease the triglyceride level and decrease the LDL and increase the HDL levels. So these are the different CVOT trials with SGLT2 inhibitors. So what they tried to do is basically they tried to prove that these agents are CV safe, but to the surprise what they found out was that they were not only CV safe, but they were also beneficial as far as CV outcomes were concerned. So as you can see from this, that all the molecules, all the SGLT2 inhibitors, right from empagliflozin in the EMPA-REG trial, canagliflozin in the CANVAS trial, dapagliflozin in the DECLARE trial, and the tugliflozin, all the agents were able to prove their CV safety. In fact, as far as data from the EMPA-REG trial is concerned, there was also a significant, both numerically and statistically, decrease in the CV death events, and all the trials, right from EMPA-REG trial to the DECLARE-TIMI trial, showed that there was a decrease in the hospitalization for heart failure in patients who had received SGLT2 inhibitors versus placebo. So this is the new class of war, SGLT2 inhibitors versus DPP-4 inhibitors. Both these molecules have their own unique place as far as management of type 2 diabetes is concerned. It depends upon the patient profile, which drug you use over the other. So this was one of the studies which basically looked at the benefits and risk of SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP-4 inhibitors when added to metformin in a type 2 diabetic patients. Both these molecules are over and above the baseline metformin that the patient is already on. So in this study, over 90% of people with type 2 diabetes were found to require something else other than metformin for management of their diabetes, and hence the second line of options that were used in these studies were SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP-4 inhibitors. So what they found in this study was that SGLT2 inhibitor in this study decreased the HbA1c by 2.8% in adults with type 2 diabetes, At the end of it, even DPP-4 inhibitors decrease the HbA1c by 2.8% in patients who were not achieving their glycemic control on metformin alone, which is a little surprising because usually they say that DPP-4 inhibitors decrease the HbA1c by around 0.4 to 0.8%. This data was predominantly driven, in patients in whom the HbA1c was just above 7%. So in patients who had HbA1cs of around 7.5, 7.8, DPP-4 inhibitors decreased the HbA1c more as compared to SGLT2 in this study. In those who had an HbA1c of more than 9%, SGLT2 was more effective, meaning to say in grossly uncontrolled diabetes, SGLT2 turned out to be more potent. However, in mildly uncontrolled patients, the DPP-4 inhibitor was sufficient as far as bringing the HbA1cs down. In people with type 2 diabetes who have renal impairment, there may be a reduction in the SGLT2 inhibitor efficacy. So as the eGFR moves from goes to less than 45, the efficacy of the SGLT2 inhibitors decreases as far as its glycemic potential is concerned. However, its effect on the CV outcomes as well as the renal outcomes continues even if the eGFR goes to less than 45. However, the glycemic efficacy definitely decreases when the eGFR goes to less than 45. The glucose lowering effects of DPP-4 inhibitors are basically unaffected or even modestly improved in people with renal impairment. So this is a fact which is well known, and the study corroborated the same. As far as optimizing the body weight is concerned, DPP-4 inhibitors are weight neutral while SGLT2 inhibitors are weight negative, that they cause modest degree of weight loss. SGLTs can result in rapid and significant sustained weight loss, more than 2 to 3. This study showed 2 to 3 in 6 months. We've seen patients lose up to 6 to 8 kgs over a period of 3 to 4 months. Interestingly, after 6 months of SGLT2 inhibition, weight loss stops even though the glycosuria continues. And this is a fact which is well known. After 6 months, you won't get any further weight loss with SGLT2 inhibitors. As far as the cardiovascular safety is concerned, the cardiovascular safety data for DPP-4 inhibitors suggests that the class does not pose an unacceptable cardiovascular risk. Although there is a small increase in the heart failure admissions in trial of participants using DPP-4 inhibitors, that was with sexagliptin. Cardiovascular safety for empagliflozin in the EMPA-REG trial suggested that it may be associated with reduced risk of heart failure, as we discussed, and cardiovascular death in people with established CVD. As far as renal protection is concerned, reductions in albuminuria have been reported in study participants using DPP-4 inhibitors, sexagliptin and sitagliptin. However, there were no significant effects on declining renal function or even incidence of renal failure. So the hard endpoints of the renal kidney outcomes, that is perhaps worsening of eGFR or end-stage kidney disease or requirement of hemodialysis, were not significantly altered by DPP-4 inhibitors. In EMPA-REG study, in the secondary outcomes, they saw that it had a beneficial effect as far as the renal outcomes were concerned, and hence there were subsequent trials carried out not only with empagliflozin but the dapagliflozin with DAPA-CKD and the CREDENCE trial with canagliflozin, which showed that when these agents were given in patients with kidney disease, it flattened the slope of decline in the eGFR, and it also decreased the renal deaths. However, it is important to remember that unlike DPP-4 inhibitors, SGLT2 are currently not recommended in people with severe renal insufficiency, that is perhaps patients on dialysis or end-stage kidney disease, because of their reduced efficacy for lowering glucose levels in these settings. However, these things will also evolve over a period of time, because now you have trials in which they've given SGLT2 inhibitors to an eGFR of around 20. As far as cancer is concerned, DPP-4 inhibition raises the levels of incretins, glucagon-like peptide, and GIP, which have potential to promote the growth of rare medullary carcinoma of thyroid. Hence, consequently, DPP-4 inhibitors are contraindicated in individuals with personal or family history of medullary carcinoma of thyroid, or with men too, where medullary carcinoma of thyroid is a predominant component. This is not seen with SGLT2 inhibitors, wherein there is no observed difference in the prevalence of cancers, including those of bladder cancer. Although, additionally, there has been no excess risk for any cancers reported for people who are born with or without the SGLT2 protein, despite persistent glycosuria throughout the life. As far as ketoacidosis is concerned, SGLT2 inhibitors trigger the increased production of ketone bodies by the liver and possibly to offset the glucose loss in urine, and as such SGLT2 inhibitors have been associated with diabetic ketoacidosis, which is not seen with DPP4 inhibitors.
Sir,
So
5 minutes left. Okay.
Just the last couple of slides. So now coming to the crux of the discussion, in which patient you would like to prefer SGLT2 inhibitor and in which patient you would like to go for DPP4 inhibitors. So as you can see, the first case is just depicting the advantages and disadvantages of each molecule. So as far as the DPP4 inhibitors are concerned, there are no issues with the tolerability. In SGLT2 inhibitors, you have weight loss. So 90% of the type 2 diabetic patients are obese. So in most of the patients, you would strive for weight loss. So SGLT2 inhibitors have an advantage in that aspect, and obviously we saw from the data that it decreases the CV risk and the hospitalizations for heart failure. The disadvantages is that the risk of diabetic ketoacidosis and the genital mycotic infections which may be seen with SGLT2 inhibitors. And as far as DPP4 inhibitors are concerned, there is theoretical risk of pancreatitis with DPP4 inhibitors, and with sexagliptin we saw there was an increased hospitalization for heart failure. So now the case B is a young person with suboptimal blood glucose management early in the disease course, in whom weight loss is a priority and bladder dysfunction and comorbidity are not a limiting factor. In such a patient, as you can see, SGLT2 significantly weighs over the DPP4 inhibitors, because you will get a good glycemic control, you will get weight loss. This person has to live with diabetes for a longer period of time, so you are striving for CV safety, you are striving for renal protection, all of which you will get with an SGLT2 inhibitor. The third case is an older person in whom weight loss is perhaps not the priority, because as as age progresses, there is decrease in the lean body mass, there is increase in the fat content, and patients tend to gradually lower their BMI. So in an older person in whom weight loss is probably not the priority, and bladder dysfunction with prostate issues and all, bladder dysfunction is a significant concerning factor, then good tolerability and easy efficacy of the DPP4 inhibitors could be advantages, because you will not get weight loss, you will not have this increased frequency of maturation which may be seen with SGLT2 inhibitors because of their mechanism of action. So in this case, that is case C, perhaps a DPP4 inhibitor would outweigh an SGLT2 inhibitor. So concluding, the concluding remarks would state that SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors are both second line therapy options for type 2 diabetes in each and every guidelines, right from the ADA guidelines to the ACE guidelines, they mention the same, and even the Indian guidelines. And it is important to consider the individual when deciding what drug should be added to metformin. So it will differ from patient to patient, obviously, and no two individuals with type 2 diabetes are exactly the same. What is best for one person may be unthinkable for the other. Thank you so much for your patient listening.